everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Furst Take Media. My name is Ryan, and I'll give you a little bit of an introduction before we get into things. So first things first, which is funny, this is my last name. I run a YouTube tech channel. You can find me at youtube.com/RyanFurst. That's RyanFurst. And under normal circumstances, I would be posting videos which actually give you some hands-on first impressions, reviews, unboxings, and just various things like that in terms of mobile technology, gaming, stuff like that. But I decided to take on another venture, and the venture is doing this podcast style as well. So the reason for that is that I would consider tech news and just really anything that's even remotely close to that to be something that happens more often and which will allow me to get more content out. On top of that, this is going to allow me to give you more of a raw opinion on certain things. You know, when you see the videos on YouTube, a lot of those are edited. There's jump cuts and stuff like that. And I'm really just showing you the most important parts of whatever's going on. But in this type of format, which I am doing video shots for, and they are going to be uploaded to YouTube, but there's audio only, which I'm going to be distributing through anchor.fm. It's going to allow me to talk a little bit more and then get a little bit more in depth with certain things. So there's that. In terms of future plans for this sort of thing, I would like to have guests on here as well, and maybe even at one point or another having, followers, subscribers, stuff like that, join me on this podcast as well and take part in the episodes, because I do value the opinions and all of that you would be able to bring to the table. So we'll watch for that sort of thing. I do want to give you a heads up as well, as that I was able to grab a very sensitive microphone. It's a Blue Yeti that I'm going to be using for this podcast. So if you hear any type of breathing or anything like that, I apologize. This thing picks up even me blinking, so it's pretty powerful. Okay, so introduction over. I do want to say that per episode, I'm going to be talking about multiple topics. So for instance, in this episode, I do have 3 topics of conversation that I want to discuss, and for each episode, I will be putting those topics of conversation in the title of the episode. So in order, today we are going to be talking about the Apple event that just recently passed. As a matter of fact, it was just the Tuesday pass at the time that I'm recording this. And we are also going to be talking about how the pre-order process went for all of the new Apple devices. The second topic of conversation is going to be that Samsung did not re-register the trademark for the Samsung Galaxy Note lineup. So that there's some skepticism around that. So we're going to be discussing a little bit about that. And then the last thing is going to be that the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro were spotted in public. They were in the wild. So we'll be discussing a little bit about that, because I understand that the Pixel 6 is a device that a lot of people are going to be looking for. All right, so let's lean into it. So the very first thing that we're going to be discussing, like I said, is going to be the Apple event. So the Tuesday that just passed, I'm recording this as of Sunday, September 19th. So it would have been the Tuesday just before this. Apple held a conference, one of their massive big to-do productions. And in that conference, they were able to give us an undercover look at some of the new products that they intend on releasing. And there was the iPhone 13, which I'm sure you've seen at the point of this episode. They did discuss a new Apple Watch, and there's a little bit of shade around that one. And then they also discussed a new iPad, which was to the surprise of many. We knew that a redesigned iPad was coming. We didn't think it was going to be necessarily this soon, but we'll get into that. So in order, the iPhone 13 lineup. First and foremost, I do want to say that I was happy to see that Apple is taking another stab at the iPhone 13 mini. The 12 mini, if you've seen my video on YouTube about it, I felt that it was an absolutely phenomenal phone. And really the only drawback that it had was the fact that the battery life was pretty poor. I do consider myself a bit of a power user, just given what I do for my regular 9-to-5 job, as well as for the content creation side of things. So there's a lot to explore when using a device like that. And I did find that just even through a regular 8-hour day job, I had to charge it twice. And I felt like that was, I mean, for some of you, as you had let me know in the comments of that video, it's more than adequate for you, and that's fine. I just, again, I do consider myself a bit of a power user, so it didn't quite cut the bar for me. But the good news is that with all of the new iPhones, Apple has, they have improved the battery to a certain percentage based on the device in particular that you're going to be getting. The camera modules have been updated with all of the devices as well. There's a lot to go into, a lot to uncover with something like that. You get updated sensors with them. You're getting certain cinematic modes. You're getting rack mode, which will allow the autofocus to go from one individual to another. I could be wrong on this. I believe that that's only available on the Pros, but I do believe that it's on all of them. But and then in terms of the physical aesthetics for the all of them, actually, is that the notch is in fact slightly narrower. So they were able to give you. It's kind of a catch-22. You get a little bit more screen real estate on the sides. However, the notch does seem to be a little bit longer or taller, depending on how you want to describe that. So you are not necessarily going to be seeing, you're not going to be seeing like a huge difference in that. It just doesn't quite look as long across as it used to. Now, something that I've seen a lot talking about on Twitter is the fact that the 13 mini and the 13 are still utilizing a 60 hertz refresh rate screen, despite having OLED panels in them. And it's just the tech behind the panels that are limiting the refresh. If you were to look at the Pro lineup, it's probably the biggest thing that's been discussed over the last little while. It's also something that people have wanted for a while. It's 120 hertz refresh rates. It's been rumored, I believe, since I want to say the iPhone 11. The rumor was actually quite strong for the iPhone 12, but due to manufacturing issues, unfortunately, that didn't quite pan out, as we all know at this point. But it is coming to the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max. And why this is impressive, if you've ever used ProMotion, let's say on the iPad Pro, and then you go and you utilize an iPad that does not have that, you absolutely notice the difference. And the way that ProMotion is going to work with the iPhones is that it's an adaptive 120 hertz refresh rate. Now, I know Android devices have been able to do this for a while. This isn't necessarily something that is new, but it is absolutely new to Apple's ecosystem. What that means is that as you're using the display on the phone, if you're actually touching the screen and you're scrolling or anything of that sort, the screen will refresh up to the 120 hertz. Whereas if you were looking at a static image, let's say that you were just simply reading something and the article's not moving on the display, the screen in itself will actually drop down to 10 hertz, which A, preserves battery life, and B, I mean, it doesn't need to move. So what's the point, right? So just taking a look over the notes here, you do get the additional camera lens that you would typically get with the Pro lineup as well. We saw that again last year. Now, something that I'm really happy that Apple did this year was that they didn't single out the Pro Max for having a better camera than the regular Pro. They did that with the 12 lineup, where the Pro Max had better lenses in it than I think it was only one of the cameras, but better lens to begin with. Whereas now, if you get the 12 Pro or 13 Pro or 13 Pro Max, you will get the same camera regardless of device, which for me, I think that's absolutely fantastic. That doesn't necessarily single out a certain group. There are individuals that really prefer having the smaller Pro, or really can only afford the smaller Pro, and individuals that really like to take photos on their phone. Considering phones are actually rivaling professional cameras at this point, it's kind of crucial. And for myself, I really wanted to go down to a Pro this year, and the 12 Pro Max. I was using the 11 Pro Max, and then I upgraded to the 12 Pro Max, which a lot of you that follow me on YouTube are aware of. And despite the fact that like my hands can handle it, this is probably just a personal issue. I'm not sure if any of you have gone through this as well, but the thumb knuckle on my right hand, just because of how I hold the phone, has actually become it's almost like slightly inflamed, or it hurts or something like that. When I went back down to the Z Fold 3 5G and I was using just the cover screen, the phone is considerably more narrow, and that pain in that knuckle actually went away. And then as of recently, I went back to my 12 Pro Max just to kind of get everything updated as I pre-ordered the 13 Pro. So I want to make sure that everything is ready to go. The pain started to come back, and I'm not sure if it's just coincidence or if it's because of the size of the phone or how I'm holding the phone, but it'll be interesting to see if the 13 Pro is able to alleviate any of that. In terms of aesthetics, similar as I had mentioned previously, is that the notch size has gone down with the Pro lineup, with all of them. The difference is similar to the even going back to the 11 and the 12, is that the Pro lineup has a stainless steel frame around it as opposed to aluminum, which is what you would get on the on just the base model, the mini and the regular 13. And I don't want to necessarily say that I'm a clumsy individual, but I do strongly prefer having stainless steel on the device. I mean, I even do the same thing for my Apple Watch. And the reason for that is that the phone seems to be able to take bumps a little bit more rigidly, less likely to break, almost impossible to dent. And if I'm taking a look at my 12 Pro Max right now, the frame doesn't even have any scratches or anything on it. So Apple did very, very well with that. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm super easy on my phones either, as much as I am like with a power user. The phone comes with me just about everywhere. And again, if you follow me on YouTube, you've probably noticed that as I show my phone periodically, I don't have a case on it. Really the only thing that I have on it in terms of protection is screen protector, which I feel is essential, but I don't like putting cases on my phones unless I absolutely have to. Typically just if I'm like going to the gym or heading into town or something like that, and accidents happen, right? Life comes at you fast. So those are really the only times in which I would use a case. Okay, next topic that they discussed was the Apple Watch, or at least I may not necessarily be going in the same order that they are, but the Apple Watch, I don't even quite know where to start with this. I was at my regular 9 to 5, and I was kind of watching the conference. Like, I had other work that I had to do, of course, but the conference was playing in the background. Some of my colleagues were watching it as well, because all of us are kind of like Apple fanatics, so to speak. And the Apple Watch part came on. And the reason why I'm kind of hesitating when I say this is that the Apple Watch didn't at all turn out to be what any of us were expecting. Now, not going to name names. If you know, but we had some leaks that were released well before the conference took place, and none of it panned out. I feel really bad for those that were involved, because I know what the internet can get like, and I don't want to necessarily call myself a keyboard hero, but I hate when people on the internet kind of go rabid when things don't turn out. It's just a matter of mediating your own expectations and, kind of just going with it. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't know how to do that, or just completely neglect trying to do that. And so the leaks and the renders that we had seen ended up being the polar opposite of what we had received. What we had seen was that the edges of the Apple Watch were going to be flat as opposed to curved as they currently are, and that the corners were going to be a chamfered 90-degree angles. So essentially the Apple Watch was going to be far more angular. It was going to be flatter all the way around, including the display. None of that happened. What we ended up getting was the same physical design that we have seen, I believe, since I want to say the Apple Watch 4, where the edges are still curved, the screen is still curved. Nothing changed. And aesthetically, the watch does look identical. Now, what Apple has done was they were able to shrink the size of the bezels on the Apple Watch, so that the screen it goes out a little bit further toward the edges, which I think is both good and bad. Good, obviously, because you get a little bit more screen real estate, and it's because of that screen real estate that Apple is calling these the devices 45 millimeter and 41 millimeter rather than 44 and 40 that we have been receiving for a couple of years now. So you get an updated name change, and then with the expanded screen, another good is that we finally get an on-screen keyboard with an Apple Watch, which supports swipe. So you can type if you want to, or you can swipe. You still get the regular input methods that you would have had previously with an Apple Watch. Those have not changed. So those are the two positives. The negative that I've been able to find or surmise based on the research that I've done as to why this turned out the way that it did, the screen doesn't fit. That sounds like a ridiculous statement. Now I'll backtrack here. It fits, but just barely. Everything leading up to this point and how the conference came out to be were two, how do I say this? It didn't come out like Apple would normally do it. Apple's known as being a company that typically does this type of planning 5, 6, 7, 8 years in advance. I remember, I don't like talking about this because it was kind of an upsetting point in time, but when Steve Jobs passed, there was a lot of people online that were like, oh, Apple's never going to be the same, and so on and so forth. But the thing is that Steve Jobs' name was signed and stamped on patents and documents of upcoming devices for up to 5 years after his passing, which means that like Apple, they plan for the future. That's just typically what they do. And if you are going to be a successful company, that is something that you need to do. Is you always have to have some type of plan, and Apple is definitely not one that doesn't have that. However, the renders that we had seen for this Apple Watch were very much real. I wholeheartedly believe that, because the individuals that released this information got literally every other tidbit of information right. This was the only one that was wrong. And the fact of the matter is that it's unlikely that the only physical change that Apple would have done on an Apple Watch is just expand the screen ever so slightly. Like that was the only physical difference to this device, which, I mean, I get that Apple is one that likes to try and recycle physical appearances and stuff like that for at least a few years, but we are going on, 4 years now? 3 or 4 years of the exact same physical design of an Apple Watch, so it's definitely due for a refresh. And then on top of that, if you were to take a look at the conference and you watch it, every other segment had this very smooth, I guess, transition or segue into the next topic of conversation, the next product that they were going to release, and the Apple Watch did not. So if I remember correctly, the iPhone was the very last thing that they talked about. They started off with the iPads, and so you get this big to-do at the very beginning of the conference for the iPads. There's like this giant musical number that they did going into the conference to begin with. Very smooth transitional movement into talking about the iPads. And then the Apple Watch was second. They buried it right in the middle. And instead of any type of smooth transition, as they even did from like the Apple Watch side of things into the iPhone, it was literally just a quick jump cut, like honestly, the jump cut looked worse than something that I would even do. And I'm relatively new on YouTube, having my channel only been out since May. And it, like, even when I was watching that, I was like, ooh, that was rough. Yeah. And it definitely gave vibes of being filmed last minute. And so that gives me an idea that maybe the rumors that we were hearing that Apple was running into some pretty severe manufacturing issues with the Apple Watch were in fact true. So like I said, I believe that the renders that we had seen were real. I am now thinking that maybe they will be reserved for future Apple Watch iterations, let's say the 8 or maybe even the 9. What I had read was that from the renders that we had seen with the flat edges, the flat screen, was that the display in itself, they were having difficulty actually keeping it in the frame. Through real world usage, the display was actually starting to kind of pop out and stuff like that, which is stuff that we had seen when the Pixel 5, for instance, was first launched. There was like that big thing where there was like this gap between the screen and the body, and like the screen would slowly start to lift out of the phone. And Apple being the type of company they are for quality assurance, obviously that wasn't going to fly. So who knows, maybe that was it, and then they just needed a little bit more time at the drawing board. So we'll have to see. But I will say that I am excited about having an on-screen keyboard with the Apple Watch, finally. My hands aren't super large, so I should be able to make use out of that. But if any of you have like really big fingers, you'll probably want to default to swipe if you're going to use that at all, if you're even going to get this Apple Watch. And then they talked about the iPads. Not too much to go over in terms of just the base iPad. To be honest, they recycled, again, the same physical appearance. So the home button lives on in the iPad at least for another year. And everything else was virtually the same. However, the iPad mini, to everybody's surprise, was unveiled as well. Now, the same individuals that I just mentioned for the Apple Watch, they were able to release leaks and renders for an updated chassis and just physical appearance for the iPad mini, and they were right. And it came out, and everybody freaked out, including myself. It basically looks like a shrunken down iPad Pro, but with the iPad mini being the size that it is, you can actually hold it with one hand, which is really, really cool. So if you wanted just a quick, easy tablet on the go that runs iOS, that is absolutely going to be the one that you want. Gonna name drop here, but iJustine had an interview with Tim Cook after the conference, and he actually pulled one out. Like, he had an iPad mini sitting right beside him, like one of the updated ones. It was pretty cool. I mean, if you want to think about it, it was kind of like our first hands-on look of the new iPad mini. It looked really cool, and the little mini commercial that they played for it was really neat. Not sure if I'm going to get one. I do have the iPad Pro, and to be honest, when it comes to iPads, I do prefer to have, the size that I do. However, I am considering getting it for my wife. She tends to, like, when up until recently, like, I gave her my old iPad Pro, but she had the iPad mini, and I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the iPad mini. So even if I don't necessarily use it, it'd be fun to have one in the house at least. So in terms of the Apple event, those are really the biggest things that came down. The pre-order for the iPad mini basically opened up almost like immediately after the conference. People were already pre-ordering it, already securing their device. The iPhone pre-order process just passed. It started on Friday, so 2 days ago. And the Apple Watch pre-order is going to take place later this fall, which leans into what I was saying, that the pre-production units don't even exist. I honestly think that Apple ran into a very last-minute issue with this that they could not resolve, and so they had to quickly MacGyver something together for the Apple Watch, and that would lead to the fact that its pre-order process is taking place later on down the road. The pre-order process for the iPads, it went over without a hitch. There was absolutely no issues with that. I will say that the iPhone pre-order process was a touch different. The reason for that is that there were so many people trying to pre-order it at the same time that Apple, I think, I could be wrong, but I think that they implemented a bit of a digital lineup without telling people that that's what they were doing. What leads me to believe that I was up, ready to go, as maybe even some of you were, and come 7 minutes past the hour, I was still getting the error on screen saying that they were getting ready, that the system wasn't set, and I had to wait longer and longer and longer. Whereas when I was checking Twitter to see if there was some type of an issue, and I mean, I'm pretty frequent on Twitter, so if you're not following me on there and you want to and you want to kind of chat with me about tech, you can find me at Ryfurst, RYFURST. People were posting photos of their order process already being completed and being processed. It's a state of processing. And so I'm like, why? How are they? What's happening here? So I think that they had that digital lineup. It didn't tell people that that's what was going on. After my process, I had seen other people saying that they were still sitting at that screen that I was previously sitting at, saying, we're still getting things ready. Please wait. And then other people were straight up saying they couldn't order at all. Like they could get through, but the system just wasn't letting them. I didn't have any issues like that. I wasn't trying to use an Apple Card or anything like that. And that seemed to be the common occurrence, is that if you were trying to use an Apple Card is when you weren't able to order any of the products, which just drips with irony, but it is what it is. Those people ended up being successful, but obviously the whole pre-order process, the taste of it anyway, would have been soured for them simply because like it just didn't work out the way that one would expect it to, especially for a company like Apple. So varying reports. You see a lot of people online that were thinking, this is a fantastic pre-ordering process. I've never had any issue with it, so we were good to go. And then you had your others that were like, this is the worst process I have ever gone through to pre-order a device in my life. And so you got two sides of the camp, but you're going to get that in anything in life, right? So, but yeah, the device is up for pre-order. Most at this point now have been pushed back to early to mid-October. Just for the sake of it, I went through to see what a pre-order would look like for a 256 gig Pro Max. Because of where I live, I'm not sure if that necessarily impacts the shipment dates, but I was given a quote of early November, and I laughed. I was like, wow, okay. And I get it. For Pro or Pro Max, the 256 gig and higher are likely going to sell out faster than the 128 gigs. And the reason for that is due to one of the new camera features with the 13 Pro and Pro Max is shooting in 4K ProRes. If you have 128 gig, the phone won't even let you do that. You're maxed out at 1080. And for some people, that's totally cool. But if you are really going after that cinematic effect, 4K ProRes is for you. It gives you considerably more flexibility when you are editing your footage. If you're using things like Final Cut Pro, it's considerably less resource taxing. So it's easier for the program to, kind of adjust colors, adjust lighting, cut and splice, stuff like that. So I personally don't need it. I don't really have any issues with the way that I shoot my videos now for my regular channel, and I'm not having an issue so far shooting for the podcast episodes either. So again, if you want to actually see the video side of it, of me basically just talking into a camera, you can go see it on my YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/RyanFurst, RyanFurst. Please subscribe if you're there, if you like this type of content. But yeah, in terms of 4K ProRes, I mean, I might want or need it later down the road, but as we sit now, I'm Gucci, no problems. So the pre-order process, ready to go. So if you want to, you can pre-order the new devices either through apple.com, apple.ca, depending on where you live, of course. Elsewhere in the world, of course, you're going to have your different your finalizations to your domains. Alternatively, of course, you can do it through your cellular providers wherever you live. Next up, in terms of topics, this one was surprising, and I'm not sure what the future is going to hold for these particular devices, but Samsung chose not to re-register the trademark for the Galaxy Note name. Take that as you will. That could mean any number of things. As it stands right now, the Z Fold 3 5G and the Z Flip 3 5G really messed up those names in my Fold 3 video. They took the spotlight of Galaxy Unpacked, whereas normally that's where we would see the new Note lineup and anything else really that Samsung was working on. And this year, that was not the case. We got a bunch of foldables. We got the watch. We got the new headphones. There's a few other things as well. Missing Note. And I'm torn on this. So I do have the Z Fold 3 5G. Currently using, well, sorry, that's a lie. I was using it up until yesterday, and I'm back on my iPhone, just getting it set and ready for the new launch. But the folds and the flips, as fantastic as they are, the flip doesn't have great battery life, but the fold is pretty solid. As great as they are of devices, and as much as I love that innovation and kind of pushing that envelope, I am one that, like, year over year, enjoyed using the Note. I got the Note. I even still have a Note 7, the big explodey one. Clearly at this point, it's one of the fine units. I feel like that I would have been in some danger at this point, but it's strange to see that Samsung hasn't re-registered it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are done with the Note lineup. There's been some things that I've seen on Twitter in which the frames, the chassis, and other various parts that you would consider to go on, let's say, the Note 21 or Note 22 or whatever Samsung would call it, hypothetically, have been seen through supply chain. So parts exist. Whether or not we actually see the device coming up is going to be a different story. Now, I understand that you're going to get your two sides of the fence on this one. You're going to get the people that are like, I don't really care. Like, the Note was either too big or too business oriented for me, so I don't really care too much. And or you're like, well, what was the point of an S Pen? Like, you can get it on the Fold 3 now, but you're going to get the other side of the fence. And I honestly feel like I'm on this one where it's like, the Note was a staple. And it's kind of ironic that this is the year that Samsung is like, nah. And the reason for that, for those of you that don't know, as of next month, October of 2021, will be the 10-year anniversary of the Samsung Galaxy Note lineup. So the very first Note was launched 10 years ago in October. And this is the year that Samsung was like, nah, we don't need one. It just seemed kind of ironic, a little strange to me. But I mean, who knows? Like, their focuses can be changing. It's not necessarily like we can expect them to make a Note until the day the sun burns out. And that's the thing with this type of market, this type of industry, is that it is ever changing. The only constant is change. And so the idea that Samsung might be done with the Note line is something that we do need to wrestle with. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but it's definitely something to think about. That the article on that it was posted. Saw the first one from Tech Radar on September 7th of earlier this month, and then there was another one that I had seen from September 8th. 6 days ago, Sam Mobile. Also, Samsung didn't renew the Galaxy Note trademark, so it's kind of all over the place, and people are thinking, like, what are you doing, Sammy? And I'm one of them. So if you happen to know what's going on, feel free to let me know. Again, follow me on Twitter at Ryfurst, RYFURST, and let's talk about it. Okay, and last topic for today is going to be the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro. Now, if you've been subscribed to me for a while, if you've been following me for a while, you know that on the Android side of things, my preference is in fact Pixel devices. I love just how clean they are. I love how simple they are. There's no bloatware. There's none of that extra stuff that you might use, but not necessarily. You don't really have to go through it and disable a bunch of apps or uninstall a bunch of things. Essentially, when you get a Pixel device, it's just plain Jane. And I love that vanilla Android. And there's been a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement about the new Pixel lineup. Pixel 6 Pro was initially leaked and rendered by the same individuals I was talking about for the Apple Watch, and again, spot on. So, kind of going back to what I was saying, they were right on the money with what they had shown us. And it was it made the device kind of look like an alien, but at the same time, it was really appealing. When I had seen it, I even released a video on YouTube talking about the specs and everything that was expected for the device. And Google, as they do every so often, were releasing like a nugget of information about the Pixel just to kind of whet everybody's palates and make sure that 6 and 6 Pro were still forefront of everybody's mind, or at least somewhere in the brain. They just want us to kind of lap it up. And to that effect, they continued to tease things on Twitter and on Instagram for weeks. And just a couple of days ago, the 6 and 6 Pro, the new Pixel devices, were spotted in the wild at a Google store in New York City. So look, but don't touch. Basically, they were inside of a display, and you were allowed to get a full 360 view of this device in person. And people, again, is similar to what I was saying, because there's like the Pixel fan base is very loyal, and rightfully so. And a lot of people will kind of rip on the devices just because there were a couple of hit or misses over the years, but really the Pixel device has been, in one way, shape, or form, fairly stable. Typically in the camera, the camera is like legendary in terms of mobile devices, and again, it has that title for a very good reason. So when people were able to see the new camera array in person in New York, obviously pictures were shot of it and people were talking about it. And we had the idea maybe that Google was going to hold a conference about the device a day before the Apple event, which made no sense whatsoever. So whoever decided to try and spread that rumor or whatever, give your head a shake, because that would have been that would have been PR suicide for Google, and they know that. So basically that definitely wasn't going to fly in any way, shape, or form. But what they have been doing has been very clever in terms of giving us little nuggets here and there. So I feel like we are getting very, 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 very close, because now physical devices are starting to show up in the wild for the Pixel 6. If we were to take a look at any type of release date information, it all depends on where you go, of course, but it seems like the news changes from outlet to outlet. So depending on who you're reading it from or where you're getting your information, like we're seeing things in terms of like October 28th, but then there's also ones that stated that we were getting it September 13th, like I had said. And I mean, we're all over the place. So Google's keeping everybody in the dark about it, at least at the time that I'm recording this, and I haven't been able to find anything solid myself, but they are absolutely doing a wonderful, wonderful marketing job in terms of keeping everybody wanting just a little bit more, and like, give me this phone. Where's this phone? I want this phone. I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter, specifically from places like India, that are actually really upset with Google right now, simply because it's already been stated by Google that the device likely will not be coming to India. I could be mixing my news up here because I know that I think it was the Pixel 5a was not released in India, and then I'm seeing very similar reports about the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. So there's individuals that live there that really want to get their hands on this phone. To be honest, I would say like a massive amount of the loyalty for the Pixel brand is in India, and they're not doing that. So, I mean, I don't work for Google. I don't have any type of insider knowledge as to why they're doing what they're doing. Who knows? They might backpedal and do it regardless, just realizing that they do have such a fan base there. But that remains to be seen. But anyway, in terms of the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro, yeah, if you live in the New York area, feel free to go to the Google store because you are going to be able to see the new devices in person. And I'm not going to lie, pretty jealous. But yeah, coming up, this is pretty much the end of this episode, but coming up within the week, I'm going to be filming and uploading a unboxing and first impressions of the iPhone 13 Pro. I should be getting mine on the 24th, and that weekend I'm going to really put it through its paces. The biggest thing that I wanted to go over in terms of that device is going to be battery life, because all of the devices, of course, are going to have a slightly bigger battery. I'm not going to lie, though, a little nervous. When I got the 12 Pro, I was pretty upset with the battery, which is what led me to the Pro Max. So I'm going to let you guys know exactly where that sits. So if you aren't following me on Twitter or subscribe to me on YouTube, I would love it if you went ahead and did that. That's it. First podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please feel free to follow me. All right. Take care.